It's playoff weekend on the Road of Champions. Welcome to the Road of Champions. I'm your host, Brian Sweeney, the voice of the Women's Football Alliance Pro Division National Championship game. Alex Wested and myself cannot wait to talk playoff football. But first, let's look back at the Week 8 scores and highlights. The St. Louis Slam finished back-to-back perfect regular seasons when they went into Indiana and took care of the Valor by a score of 64-6. The Tampa Bay Inferno finished the regular season at 2-4 for the second straight season with a Week 8 loss to the West Palm Beach Coyotes, final score 26-13. And in pro versus pro games, the Dallas Elite Mustangs completed their season with a much better showing against in-state rivals, the Houston Energy. In the end, however, the Energy was too strong and handed the Mustangs a 14-12 loss. The DC Divas ended their 25th season with their best record and first winning record since the COVID-canceled season of 2020. This time over the Philly Phantoms, final score 55-0. The Minnesota Vixen went into Nebraska to face the Pride. For Minnesota, a win was needed to make sure their last losing season stayed back in 2012. Nebraska was looking to get their first win against Minnesota. In the end, Minnesota shut out the Pride for the second straight season, this time 35-0. Alex, Minnesota, Nebraska, and DC are the only Pro Division teams to play an all-Pro Division schedule. How important is this for the rest of the Pro Division moving forward into 2026?
In a 6-game schedule, Brian, I don't think it's that important. I think it's important you want to be able to play the best competition and have that experience against them in a regular season format before you might run into them into the postseason. But in that 6-game small sample size, it's not so much who you play, and certainly St. Louis in the schedule, they have proved that. Cali is in the exact same boat in terms of how that's concerned. Tampa still in the playoffs despite not playing a fully pro schedule. But you really like, again, to have those head-to-head matchups early on. Does it matter? No. What matters is the score and how badly you beat a team by, not as much who it is that you're playing. If there were an 8, 10, 12-game schedule, different conversation. But here in 6, I don't think as much.
And in the first of 2 games of the week, the Pittsburgh Passion finished with back-to-back winning seasons when they gave us a look at D2 powerhouse, the Cincinnati Cougars. When the clock hit 0, the Passion showed the Cougars that the pro level is a battle by winning 59-26. Alex, for the first half, this game was a back-and-forth battle. In fact, broadcaster Matt Fargo said that this game could catch the Minnesota-Cali game from 3 weeks ago for total points scored. In the end, though, Marcelina Chavez played an amazing game for the Passion, and their defense slowed down the rushing of Kiana Williams. Do you still feel the Cougars are ready to make the jump to the Pro Division?
Well, first of all, I'm a big Matt Fargo guy. It's hard not to be. You look at this game, though, and the pace of it, if it does get to that point, you have concerns, again, about both teams' defenses. Not so much as the game progressed. You were looking for that dominant, decisive home game that we hadn't seen from Pittsburgh yet this season, and arguably dating back to last year's postseason. This was it. Are you concerned about the first half play? Maybe. Not as much, though, and looking at how Makai Chavez played this game, looking at how the ball was able to move on the ground through the air against a pretty good defensive unit in Cincinnati. Remember, Cincinnati entering this game was ahead of Pittsburgh in the Massey ratings. What that stands for, in terms of games being played on the computer versus on the field itself, that worked better in Pittsburgh's favor. I really liked what I saw out of the Passion. And in terms of Cincinnati, again, the growth is there. The question is there. Can they sustain this at the Pro Division level? I certainly think that they can. They have the ability to. And now, even with this loss against Pittsburgh, their road in Division II is tough. But Pittsburgh all of a sudden proves that we finally got to see a real Pittsburgh Passion performance here. Dominating defense when they needed to, and an offense that could run a track meet up and down the field. They look in a good spot for the first time this season at home heading into this postseason.
And in the second game of the week, the Nevada Storm hosted the Mile High Blaze. In the end, this game gave both teams a .500 record for 2 of the last 3 seasons. Final score, Mile High over the Storm, 35-13. Alex, with a new head coach this season, Nevada improved over last season, both in wins and allowing 50 fewer points throughout the course of the season. For the Blaze, they are still looking for that one player to get them to the next level. Your thoughts on how this game ended?
If there's anything, Brian, that Road of Champions is, it's a show about accountability. Earlier this season, I declared the Mile High Blaze dead in the water. We'll talk about their postseason hopes coming up here in a couple of segments. But this is a Mile High team that offensively had nothing going for them. Offensively looked as clueless as I've seen them look in terms of their time at the pro division level. But all of a sudden, watching this film back, you had a running game that was working well on both sides. The Nevada Storm couldn't do anything to contain the rushers. And you think about that first touchdown for Mile High in this game, a beautiful outside edge rush where you take advantage of a defense that wasn't ready for it. This was a surprising result from an offense that we hadn't seen put more than 20 points up against anybody of note here this season. All of a sudden, they dropped 35 on the road in Nevada. What's going on? I ask the same question, too, for Nevada. This is a game that, in terms of watching this game, in terms of seeing this game, there was a lot of things that I had concerns with for Nevada. Yes, you have a new head coach. Yes, you have this new system. But in terms of places where Nevada's been really good, it's been at home. And to give up 35 points and only be able to put up 13 yourself, this is still a one-score game within reason at halftime. And all of a sudden, for Nevada, you had a driver's seat spot into the postseason, and you blow it. And that, to me, Jessie Felker's a great quarterback. She made the All-American roster again this year. But to me, Nevada should have done better here. Did they? No. And that's the heartbreaking part for the fans in Reno. But for Mile High, proving the critics wrong and making a postseason berth out of it, great job to Denver.
We'll be right back to look at the Division III playoff bracket. Welcome back. It's playoff season, and each week we will not only look at the Pro Division, but the Division II and Division III playoff picture as well. Let's take a look now at the Division III playoff matchups. The 6-0 Oklahoma Rage will host the 4-2 Sioux Falls Snow Leopards. Having missed the playoffs last season, the Snow Leopards are looking to rebound from a first-round exit in 2023. The Rage are looking to make it to the conference championship in back-to-back seasons. The 3-3 Rocky Mountain Thundercats host the 2-4 Wasatch Warriors. These teams met in the last week of the regular season, with the Thundercats coming out on top 28-0. The 6-0 Richmond Black Widows welcome the 5-1 Upstate Lady Predators. After only 3 combined wins in the 24 season, both teams are looking for a strong playoff push. And the 5-1 Connecticut Ambush welcomed the 4-2 Music City Misfits. Last season, both teams failed to make the playoffs. Alex, we have 5 teams in the Division III playoff race this year that failed to make the playoffs in 2024. Which of these teams has the best chance of making it to camp?
Well, looking just based solely on records, you look at Oklahoma, you look at Richmond, and you figure those 2 teams have the straightest shot. What's important to remember about Division III is that Division III has a lot of parity in it, where you could go realistically anywhere and play anybody at any time in that same level, and you don't really know what that outcome's going to be. Yes, there's a gap between the top teams of Division III and the bottom teams of Division III, but that parity still exists. The second part you have to look at with these records and these schedules is who these teams are playing. You look at that Rocky Mountain and Wasatch game where you have 2 teams that are both in the Rocky Mountains, both playing at altitude, and both play very difficult schedules with Division II and with pro teams. I like the team that comes out of the West in this bracket overall. I certainly think that Sioux Falls continues to develop at a time where, yes, you could have folded up shop, but Sioux Falls continues to develop that program, and it's a really good job of what they've done. And looking out into the East, you look at teams like Music City and Nashville, where they've had such a great strength and building and legacy of the Music City Misfits out in Nashville. But again, whether it's Wasatch, and again, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly because I'm not familiar with the geography of Idaho and Nevada, but there's little things here and there that you really like about each of these teams, offensively, defensively, and of course, it always comes down to turnovers in Division III.
Now let's look at the Division II playoff bracket. The 6-0 Salt Lake City Wildcats host the 4-2 New York Knockout. Last season, New York made it to the postseason, but was eliminated in the first round. The 3-3 New Mexico Bonitas host the 2-4 Derby City Dynamite. Last season, New Mexico was the runners-up in the D3 championship and still made the jump to the D2 level. The 6-0 Baltimore Nighthawks host the 4-2 West Palm Beach Coyotes. Both teams made it to the playoffs last season, with the Coyotes losing in the national championship. And the 5-1 Cincinnati Cougars welcomed the 4-2 Atlanta Rage. These teams met in the middle of May, with the Cougars getting the win. Alex, Salt Lake, West Palm Beach, and Baltimore each have wins this season over a Pro Division team. How much is that going to help them as they play in the Division II playoffs?
It should. In terms of structure, that's the big thing you look at, where you talk about these teams at the top flight of Division II and all the way up at WFA Pro, where they have that same style of offense. Run game complements the pass game. Defense throws in extra blitzes, throws in extra pass protection to try to confuse a quarterback. There's some really good things that you see there with that pro level. But you have to remember, Brian, this is Division II. You're still playing that Division II team. There should be some film available. Take advantage of that. You look at these teams, especially in home field, Baltimore, Cincinnati, New Mexico, and Salt Lake. Particularly with New Mexico, that home field advantage, forcing a team to head out from Louisville, Kentucky, all the way out to New Mexico, that is not an easy trip to make. Certainly with the weather, that's a whole other wrinkle to that matchup. I said a couple of weeks ago that Salt Lake, Cincinnati figured to be the prohibitive favorite matchup in terms of what we'll call on Friday night in Canton, Ohio. With Cincinnati losing to not losing to Baltimore, but losing that home field spot to Baltimore, I don't know that that's going to be as straight of a walk as it should be. Salt Lake probably comes out of the West. We know that. But in terms of looking out east, where you have New York, Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Atlanta, you can make a good argument for each of those four teams as why they'll be playing in Canton, Ohio. Personally, home field advantage is big in the WFA, especially at Division II. We'll see if Baltimore is able to ride that storm out.
Now let's look at the Pro Division matchups. The reigning national champions St. Louis Slam and their 6-0 record welcome the 4-2 Nebraska Pride. This will be the first ever meeting of these two teams. The 3-3 Minnesota Vixen are back in Cali to play the 5-1 Cali War. This game's location was decided in the Massey ratings by only 1/100th of a point. When these teams faced off at the beginning of June, they combined for 125 points, the most ever in a Pro Division game. The 5-1 Pittsburgh Passion hosts the 3-3 Mile High Blaze. The Passion are looking to get back to their second straight conference championship game, and the Blaze are looking for their first since joining the pro level. And the 4-2 DC Divas host the 2-4 Tampa Bay Inferno. The Divas are hoping to get their first postseason win since 2018. Alex, this looks to be some great football, especially some of these matchups that we've never seen before, like Mile High and Pittsburgh. Your thoughts on who moves on to the conference finals?
Well, when we recorded the Week 8 episode of Road to Canton here in the studio, it's a different road now than what we expected it to be when we recorded this show because of that Nevada Mile High game. And you look at these matchups and you have your 1 and 4 that you look at as a typical, you don't want to say a trap game because you treat each opponent with respect, but to me, I look at this as a trap game. For me, in the East, it's how does Pittsburgh continue that great run of form that they had against Cincinnati to end their season at home? How does Mile High keep the surprise going and keep their offense going? We know their defense is great, and we know that defense travels in the postseason. Can it do so across multiple time zones and to a Pittsburgh offense that already seems to have things figured out? Same too out in the West, where you have St. Louis taking on Nebraska. And this is a matchup that's relatively close in proximity to each other, but is also very interesting just because you don't know what you're going to see out of Nebraska. You don't know what you're going to see out of St. Louis, having not played a pro-level opponent since they defeated Minnesota up here in the Twin Cities a couple of weeks ago. And so you don't know what you're going to get out of that. But then you also have the exciting air raid matchup of Cali and Minnesota that's going to be another instant classic. You have DC and Tampa, which figures to be another great game. And you look at the 8 teams in this postseason, Brian, I could give you a reason for each of the 8 to make the championship in Canton, Ohio, and each of the 8 to miss the championship in Canton, Ohio. That's how close the WFA pro level is this year. And frankly, for the league, it's a good thing. You want markets invested. You want teams to all feel like they have a chance. You don't want one team beating the doors off of everybody. One, because it's not good football. Let's call that what it is. Two, it gives more opportunities for more markets to get involved and more markets to get invested. We saw a classic last year with Boston and St. Louis in the national championship. I expect each of these postseason matchups this year in 2025 to be the exact same.
We'll be right back. Lois Cook continues her series of interviews with the stars that make up the WFA Pro Division. This week, sitting down with Nisha Washington of the Nevada Storm in her segment, A Timeout with Lo.
My name is Nisha Washington. I play offensive line and inside linebacker for the Nevada Storm.
Handoff up the middle, has a hole. A big hole. She's still on her feet and just bowls her way through on that one. Touchdown Storm.
Why do you play football? Football has always been my dream sport. Come from a family of sports. My parents both were athletes. My dad played Division I football. He coached football my whole life. So it's something I was always around. Also something I was never able to participate in or allowed to participate in. There was no girls in the league. My dad, as much as he supported my athletics 100%, would never allow me to play. It was always the one sport that was like a big no-no. So I just decided to do everything else. So I would wrestle, or I'd play soccer. Softball was a big one for me.
For Detroit. Hilton with the snap. Looks to get, nope, she escapes one tackle. She is going to be taken down in the backfield. And that is how the first half will end.
So now that you've played every sport, how does football compare?
There's really no comparison. Honestly, I had a hard time being a bigger girl, playing a lot of sports where most of the women are smaller than me, weight-wise, or they're a lot taller than I am, or they can jump a lot better. I always had some athleticism, quick feet, but I was always heavy. Like I was too heavy for softball, or I was too short for basketball, didn't jump high enough. I ended up playing college softball for 2 seasons, went on to play 1 season of college volleyball, and it was always fun, but it never quite, I didn't really have the confidence to say like, you know, this is my thing, and I feel like I found that with football. Watching my whole life, I would always watch the linemen. Being a bigger girl was something I aspired to do. Like if I could ever play football, the line is where it's gonna be, just because that's where I made that connection. Like I wasn't really a skills, and I'm like, that's me. And so I don't know, it knocked some sense into me. It just brought everything full circle. I don't know why. I'm a little crazy, I guess, because it kind of changed my life, I feel like.
What is a message that you would give to parents who don't want their daughters to play?
That's a good one. I would say be a little more open-minded. Working with kids, I do hear from a lot of parents that, or at least from my dad, it was like he was scared, or it's like not a thing that you see very often. I would say just be open-minded. If you have a girl that's an athlete and she wants to try, I think that's a problem in women's sports is a lot of parents, sometimes the dads don't really just let them try. You know, I think if I would have had the chance to just try, to jump in his, you know, little league practice, and even if I got the mess knocked out of me, like just having that confidence that I could take it, I would say the girls are capable of a lot more than the parents think that they are. And let them have a shot. It doesn't hurt to try. If they don't like it, cool, at least they'll always remember that you gave them a chance. Yeah.
Don't forget, the tickets are still on sale for Championship Weekend in Canton, Ohio. This historic event will take place Friday, July 25th and Saturday, July 26th at the prestigious Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Tickets on sale now through Ticketmaster at www.hofvillage.com. Road of Champions is looking for sponsors for the 2026 season. If you'd like to have your name as the official name of the show, please contact us at roadofchampions@gmail.com. For Lois Cook and Alex Wested, I'm Brian Sweeney, and we'll see you on Conference Championship Weekend on the Road of Champions.